so glad to be with you on our final webinar of 2022 spring semester. It's been a great semester, and I know you guys are seeing the finish line. Semester wraps up on Sunday. So not only do you have to make sure that you get your mama something by Sunday, you need to make sure you need to do all of your assignments, get everything turned in and wrapped up for the semester. But it's really been fantastic. Tonight, we have a great guest. It's my friend and colleague, Heather Woolley, will speak to us in just a moment, and I'll give her a proper introduction. But before I do that, I want to remind you, like I said, semester ends this Sunday, so any outstanding work, everything needs to be wrapped up as quickly as possible. If you're behind and you're struggling a little bit to get caught up, we will leave the classroom open until the end of May. The late penalties will still apply, but it gives you some time to turn in the last minute work, and we'll still grade that through the end of May. By the end of May, though, we'll have to close everything off, and if you don't get it done, we'll have to look at your options for re-enrolling in the same classes next semester. So that is an option for you, just to keep that in mind. Also, in June, we have our Destiny Gathering coming up, big conference in West Monroe, Louisiana. Be a fantastic time. I tell everyone that at least once while you're a student in DLI, you should attend the conference. Particularly if you're graduating, we'll honor you. We'll do a graduation. We'll celebrate. We'll have a big party that day. This year, the conference is June 7th through 9th. It kicks off with a welcome party on June the 7th. You don't want to miss that. A lot of fun. Then there's day sessions and evening sessions on both Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday morning is the DLI graduation. So if you can be there, come on. It's going to be a great time. We'll have a time where we're going to hang out and have some great sessions, get great teaching, but honestly, just a great time with family, and bring your children. We've got stuff for kids. We got stuff for youth. It's a whole family affair. So please be there June 7th through the 9th, West Monroe, Louisiana. You can always find out more information about how to register and where to stay and all that fun stuff at destinyleaders.com. Well, as we wrap up our semester, this semester has all been about serving our church as well. So with DLI, we have a rubric that you should be familiar with now, a template where one semester we talk about building and developing character. Who you are is more important than what you do. And all of the webinars kind of focus on building character. From there, we move on to calling. How do you discover what you're called to do, who you're called to be? And we talk a lot about that. From calling, we go to capacity. How do you increase your capacity? Many people have discovered their calling. They know what they're supposed to do, but frankly, they've never gotten any good at it. I don't know if that's great English or not, but they've never became all they could be because they haven't learned how to manage their time well and manage their talents well and to manage the resources that they've been given well. So how do you increase your capacity? Then finally, how do we put all this to work by serving our local church? The goal is not to be good at something. The goal is to be good at something for the sake of the kingdom of God and help the mission of the church go forward. We're a big advocate of the local church. We believe that the local church is the hope of the world, and that the best chance that we have as a nation, as a world, of getting things right is going to come through what God is doing at the local church level. And each of you are serving at a local church. So I thought there'd be no one better to wrap up the semester than my friend Heather. Heather is, she can introduce herself, but she is at Grace Church, and she oversees all the greeters, ushers, parking lot attendants, and several other people that I'm not able to remember right now at all 4 of our locations. So she literally has hundreds, if not thousands, of volunteers that serve under her leadership. And just Grace is a big church, complicated system, and she just serves with excellence and leads big teams, and her teams all serve so well. So I thought she'd be great to just to talk to us a little bit about serving the church and how we can serve with excellence, because that's what I always associate Heather and her ministry with, is just doing things with excellence, doing things really well, and making sure that we protect the vision and the culture of our pastors. So Heather, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more.
Hey, everybody. Well, it's an honor to be with you tonight. Thank you, Pastor Landon, for inviting me to be on this call with you, I get the opportunity, as Pastor Landon said, to work with him, and he talks about y'all all the stinking time. I mean, y'all must just be truly the most incredible group of people that has ever existed. But what an incredible ministry that Destiny is, with Pastor Landon and Dr. Phil Brassfield leading, and it's really an honor to be a part. So to tell you a little bit about myself, like Pastor Landon said, my name is Heather, and I have had a very distinct privilege throughout my entire life to grow up in the church. And I know that that is a privilege. And not only did I get to grow up in the church, but I grew up in a pastor's home. And so my dad has pastored my entire life, and the value of that is not lost on me. But one of the things that I've realized through that, which I think gives me a passion for serving and serving with excellence, is, some of you are pastors, or you're associated with pastors, or maybe your parents were pastors, and oftentimes bad things happen to pastors. People are mean to pastors. They treat them just rude, with disrespect. And I mean, watching that kind of unfold in my life could have made me not want to be a part of the local church. It really could have. But I was blessed to have such incredible parents who they shielded us from what they could. They didn't lie about what was going on, but they always encouraged us to look past that in people's lives and understand that people are just people. And at the end of the day, the local church exists to reach them. So with all of their garbage and with all their meanness and with all their anger and all that stuff, we were still called to reach them. And so my parents didn't treat people bad. And I think that that's what helped continue to develop in me the love and the desire to serve a local church, regardless of the size. I didn't grow up serving at a church the size that I'm at now, but regardless of the size, and to serve it well. Because every single one of the people that walk through the doors of our churches, your churches, deserve an excellent experience. They deserve to come in and to be able to, what we say a lot around here, experience God in a distraction-free environment, to really be able to enjoy the ministry of the church, whatever church you're at, whatever environment you're in a way that does not prevent them to potentially making a decision for Christ, or continuing their relationship with Christ, or growing in their relationship with Christ. And I'm gonna tell you, that is not an easy task to do. Regardless of the size of the church that you are at, folks, distractions are everywhere. But what I've realized is, at the end of the day, regardless of how great your pastors are, how great your leaders are, it's those that are serving every single week, every single service, that are ultimately making it to where we can do what we do. Pastor Landon is one of our campus pastors, and he knows this firsthand. And some of you on this call may be pastors as well. And so firsthand that at the end of the day, those that are serving our ministry, are serving our churches, are really why we are able to do what we do, and why we are able to accomplish what we accomplish. So every salvation, every dollar that comes in, and every person that walks through the door is ultimately being facilitated by a volunteer. I like to think of volunteers as bridges. They're bridges between where someone may be and where they could end up going. And we work so incredibly hard to make sure that we do that in a way that does not prevent anybody from saying no to Jesus today. Although I don't oversee every volunteer at our churches, we are all in one accord saying, hey, kids ministry has to be open. We have to have teachers. We have to have excellent ministry, because we have to make sure that everything is flowing. I'm reminded of the verse in Proverbs chapter 11, 24 and 25. And it says, the world of the generous gets larger and larger. I love that. So the fact that the generous world get larger and larger, and the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. So it's kind of like an oxymoron a little bit. You would think that the more that you gave away, that your world would get smaller, but we know that the way that God works, it works the opposite many times. And so the world of the stingy gets smaller. The one who blesses others is abundantly blessed. So exceeding, abundantly above anything that we could think of, are those people who are constantly blessing others, and those who help others are helped. And that verse always encourages me so much, not because that's why I do what I do, but it's a promise that says, when you give of yourself, you are actually going to grow. You're actually going to get more. I'm reminded all of the time of the time that I spend serving God is not time that's wasted. It's not time that's taken away from me. It's time that's planted. It's time that's given to God, planted. And I know that when I need that time back, I'm going to get it back, because that is how God works. But to start, just to kind of start and like kind of lay a foundation as we get into this conversation, and that's what I want it to be. I want it to be a conversation that we're having tonight. I believe it starts with the true belief that serving matters, and not serving matters because we need people to fulfill jobs, because we definitely need that. So you're on this call tonight and you oversee teams and you need people to show up on your teams. Absolutely, we need that. And as pastors, as church leaders, we need people to serve, but the serving actually matters. And so not just the job that they're fulfilling, but the heart behind what they are doing, the true belief that giving your stuff, giving your time, giving your resources, giving whatever you have to offer is actually a key to living a fulfilled life in Christ. So giving things, serving, giving something that you have, a talent, a gift, is actually the best way to live the most fulfilled life that you can in Christ. And Jesus showed us this. He showed us this through his example. He showed us how to serve by serving others. This story in the Bible that we're going to kind of get into of Jesus serving the disciples, I very rarely can read it without getting emotional, honestly, because this idea that Jesus, the Savior of the world, and he knows that, it's like it's a secret to him, spent one of his last moments with the people that he loved the most on the earth by serving them. And Jesus made it clear. We see it in Matthew where he tells them, I didn't come to be served. I came to serve. But he didn't just say that, he lived it out. He lived it in a way, tangible ways that they could look at his life and then go on and do something with that. And so in John chapter 13, it starts, and I always found this so interesting, Pastor Landon. I never really caught this before, but it says that he loved them to the end. So the final hour has come, and Jesus is getting ready to he's making his final exit. Like he's doing his last week on earth. And the Bible says that he loved them to the end. And by doing that, the scriptures that proceed after that are the fact that he served them. So Jesus, one of his final acts of showing that he loved them, and the Bible even points it out, he served them. And I kind of envision this scene, and we know this story of Jesus, and they go into the house and they're having their final meal together, and nobody washes the feet. Nobody washes the feet. Nobody thought about it. Nobody considered that people's feet might need to get washed. I mean, I don't know all of the reasons why, but nobody washed the feet. And I kind of have this picture of Jesus sitting around, and as he's kind of looking around at the group of people, he realizes two things. He realizes proud hearts and dirty feet. Proud hearts and dirty feet. Because this was a customary thing. This was not a Jesus thing. So this wasn't his church. This wasn't just the way that he thought it should be done. This wasn't Western culture, other types. This is what they did. And he looks around and he sees proud hearts and he sees dirty feet. And he comes to this realization that I've been with these folks for all of this time, and they still have this proud heart. I don't think I'm going to fix it before I go, but I see dirty feet. And what I can do is I can wash their feet. And so verse 3 of John 13 says, so Jesus got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. So he took off the thing that made him a rabbi. He took off the thing that represented him as being somebody. And he put on a towel, which is the uniform of a servant. And after that, he poured water into a basin, and he began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. And when I read this story, obviously it impacts me in so many ways, but it also impacts me because I don't like feet. So I look at this story and I think, oh, mercy. What Jesus, that's what he wanted me to do? What if he wanted me to wash people's feet? Because I have serious issues with feet. And it makes me think about my relationship with God and the reasons behind what I serve, and the idea that I sometimes have of, oh, I'm willing to do anything, but not that thing. So we spend our time at the altars, we go through Bible school, we learn the principles and the knowledge, but when it becomes time to apply it, we say, oh, but not that. When truly the ministry that God is calling us to is that which needs to be done. That is what we are called to do. So Jesus stops in the middle of eating one of his last meals, one of his last hurrahs with some of his greatest friends here on earth, and he stops and he says, you know what? People have dirty feet, and I am going to meet that need. And he did that because in the moment, that is what needed to be done. And I'm so compelled by that. I'm challenged by that. I'm convicted by that. Because oftentimes as church leaders, we want to serve in a way that either fits our personality or fits our giftings or fits our talents. And we're called to look down, and we're called to see in kind of the future, and we all call the plan, but sometimes we miss the opportunity to serve right now. And I think that that's sometimes a missed opportunity when it comes to serving our local church well. All of us on this call, all of us are gifted in doing something. I mean, we have a gifting. God didn't just send us out here and give us nothing. We're gifted to do something. And I think that if we put too much emphasis on the gifting that we have, the preaching calling, the teaching calling, the whatever calling that God has placed on our life, sometimes we'll miss an opportunity to serve the way that God has really called us to serve. And that is meeting the need of the people now, meeting the need of what is going on right now. And I believe that serving your church well means you have to fully buy into the mission and the vision of that church. And look, I'm not saying that that's easy. I'm not saying that everything your leaders call you to do, you're like, yeah, that's how I would have done it. Absolutely. Sign me up. I mean, we've all had those conversations where we're kind of just like, I don't know about that. I don't think that that's the best way to do that. Like Pastor Landon said, I have a privilege of leading the amount of people that I lead, but what that means is I am always boots on the ground. So I fully understand the ripple effects of how things are going to go. Out of anybody probably on our team in regards to specifically the Humble campus, because that's where I serve on a weekly basis the most, I know when you do that, I know the ripple. I know what's going to happen. When Pastor Brett decides we're going to take up a second offering, I'm like, why? Oh my goodness. I know what that means. I know that ushers got to get buckets and they got to get them passed and then they got to get them back up and then we got to put, like, it's not just taking up a second offering. But sometimes I can get so lost in that I forget that this is the man. He's the guy. He has the vision. He has the mission. And it's not really my job or my responsibility. Serving him, serving my church the best way possible is not to try to get all of my information to him. It's to say, hey, I understand that you're the guy. And I am completely bought into you as the person. I'm bought into the mission and the vision of this house. And so I am going to serve that mission and vision, even if it's not how I would do it. And I think that sometimes that's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to just say, hey, I'm going to put aside my expertise, my knowledge, my foresight, my involvement in this situation, and completely buy into the vision and mission of what's going on here at this church. I believe it's not viewing your serving as a responsibility. I don't like the word responsibility. I don't like, I know that we have them, and I believe that at a foundational level, serving is a Christian responsibility. But what I have found out about responsibilities through my time is that people, when they feel like they have fulfilled their responsibility, they often quit. And so I've made it a thing in my life where I don't view my service to the church as a responsibility. I view it as an honor. I view it as an opportunity. Because when I view it that way, then I never reach the point to where I say, I've done enough. I've been here long enough. I've given enough money. I've served enough. Therefore, I no longer have to do this. And so it's realizing that we have this opportunity to serve. It's embracing this idea that I am not serving, but I am a servant. So many times we can get wrapped up in the idea of serving, and we can just fall in love with serving, and we can just think so highly of ourselves because of the amount that we serve, without realizing that in our core we're not really a servant. We're just checking boxes. We're just fulfilling an obligation, a responsibility. And so it's saying to myself, it's saying to yourself that I'm not serving, I am a servant. Jesus was a servant. And he was a servant to such a degree that when he saw something not being done, he couldn't not do it. He couldn't just sit at dinner and say, you know what, this thing is going to be over soon. I'm going to be out of here in a few days, anyway. So what is it? Just the dirty feet. It's fine. It's fine. He couldn't leave it there. He had to go, and he had to do it because a servant is who he was, not just something that he did. And I think when we can kind of catch the vision of that, when we can adopt that mentality into our lives and not fall in love with the idea of serving, but fall in love with the idea of Jesus and whatever it is, and we just become servants, then we begin to serve our local church at a higher level. We learn to kind of grow in a way that we see ourselves as a contributing member of the team, not a member of the team who just wants it done our way, got to do it our way, got to make sure everything is happening our way, but a contributing member of the team. Why? Because we've bought into the vision. We've bought into the mission of what's going on, and we've made this decision that we are going to serve our local church. I mean, like Pastor Landon said earlier, I believe it too. I believe the local church is the hope of the world. I believe that the local, and I think that statement has even gone further to say the local church deployed is the hope of the world. The idea that we are creating an environment that people in our communities can come to and be forever impacted. Sometimes I wonder if, for some of us who've been in church for so long, if we forget that the gospel message of Jesus Christ is truly one of the most impactful, life-changing messages that anybody can ever hear. And so the environment that we are creating for that, whether it be in our weekend services, whether it be in our life groups, whether it be in our outreach ministries, regardless of what it is, we are creating, like I said earlier, a bridge. By serving, we're creating a bridge between this idea of God, this person of Jesus, and we're putting clothes on it, we're putting feet on it, we're making it tangible, and we're saying, and this is it lived out. So here you go. And look, I get it. Serving people is complicated. It is not easy. It truly is not easy. I mean, we're all church people, so we know church people can be some of the rudest, most unkind, most difficult people to get along with ever, like in the entire world. And I know this firsthand. When I took the position that I have now, it was like in March of one year. And so that summer I get this phone call, and it's a voicemail on my phone, and it's this lady griping about the parking lot team. I mean, she is just going off about how rude they were to her and how awful her experience was, and just shouldn't be how church is. I mean, going off. And I haven't been in this position that long. Like, I'm just kind of, okay. But I'm thinking, I know these people. Like, I know them. I don't just like know who they are. I know them. Like, I've talked to them. I know their wives. Like, I know their families. Like, these are not rude people. I'm just having a hard time processing her experience that she's having. So I called her because I'm going to hear her. I mean, I want to hear what she has to say. And as the conversation went on, she said something to me that impacted me so deeply and has stuck with me over all of this time and still today. And she said, you know what? Honestly, what it is I came to the church expecting to just be treated differently. And at the end of the day, I was treated just like I would be treated anywhere else.
Wow.
but
Yeah.
she wasn't expecting that. She came to the church expecting to be treated differently.
So good.
Yeah. And so it was the realization that I had that it's not that our parking lot attendants were just terrible and rude, but they weren't showing the love of Jesus. They weren't doing more. They weren't taking an opportunity to go further, to be more. And if we're not careful, and this is me, I am a black and white, I am a right is right and wrong is wrong, and I have a high sense of justice, and I'm a process driven person. And I mean, I love people, but my nature is to be driven that way. But what I've realized is that you just can't work with people that way, because when it comes to people, when it comes to church, when it comes to serving those that are difficult to love, there's so much gray area, so much gray area.
Yes.
And if we just make and put our heels in the ground and on our processes and on our systems and on our things and say no, 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 then I assure you we won't reach anybody. We won't reach anybody for Jesus, and we'll actually end up doing more harm. And I was thankful that I was able to have that conversation with that lady, but it makes me wonder how many of those people exist in our local churches who don't call, who don't let us know that this is the experience that they had. They don't give us the opportunity to try to explain ourselves or to try to fix it going forward. And they just leave, and they have a bad taste in their mouth of church. And I've said it before, and I've heard many other church leaders and team leaders say, well, that's their problem. That's, people are people, and they have to expect that we're going to be people too. And I hear you on that. I do. But I think that as church leaders and leaders of teams, we are called to a higher standard of the way that we take care of people, the way that we serve people. And at the end of the day, if you're going to hate me, you're going to hate me because I tried too hard, not because I didn't try hard enough.
Right.
Yeah.
So good, Heather. A couple things that you hit at that I wanted to make a little more, to bring out a little further, is in that verse 3 of the Jesus washing his disciples' feet. It says that Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the mill.
Yeah.
So it was from a place of security. He knew who he was. And because he knew who God was, and he knew who he was to God, and he knew he was going to heaven, and he knew. So it takes a very secure person to serve.
Sure.
It takes someone who knows. The people that have a hard time serving are people who have insecurity. We're like, I don't want to do that because I want people to see me as higher, as more esteemed, as more.
Yeah.
Like, what are people going to see if they pull up and they see me picking up trash out of the parking lot? Like, don't they know I'm the pastor? Like, then I'm going to look less in their eyes. So it whenever, though, you're really secure in who God's called you to be and who you are in Christ, then it allows you to do the most menial tasks without fear of like, oh, if I do that, it's going to make me look less.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point. And I think that, I mean, you're hitting on a lot of different, I mean, we could go down tons of rabbit trails with that, but I think that's such a powerful thing. And it's so weird how we all start serving. I mean, that's how everybody gets their chance. I mean, you have the person periodically who just kind of gets handed a lead pastor position or something like that. But by and large, I mean, we all start off serving, but it's at some point, and maybe that's exactly what it is. We get to this idea that we don't want to be seen doing something that someone may perceive us to be not who we titled are, or not who we view ourselves as. It's not always vain conceit that drives us there. It's, what will they think about me if I'm doing that?
Right. And another thing in that passage is that the feet thing, like, I'm with you, so gross.
Gross.
I just can't imagine. So gross. But it was the practical thing that needed to be done. And so the lesson that I take from that is that when we're in the room, wherever that is at church, it's really about doing what needs to be done in that moment, not about what our job description is or what the title of our position is. Right. So we talk about this a lot at Grace. If someone asks you where the restroom is, I mean, like, you walk them to where the restroom is. You may not be a greeter, But if you're on the team, your job is to meet that practical need of, if someone looks lost and they can't figure out where to check their child in, like that is your problem until that kid gets checked in or they've been handed off to someone to check that. Like that becomes your issue.
Yeah.
Jesus, he looked around and he saw the need that was there. If they needed someone to serve them food, he would have done that. To pour the wine, he would have done that. It was in the moment, like what needs to be done right now.
Yeah.
And I think as leaders in our church or people serving in our church, maybe the biggest skill that we can have is just that ability just to do what's needed to be done in that moment, to recognize it. Mm-hmm. I'm always amazed at people that have been around our teams for a long time that just still aren't able to see the need, that they're not, that they aren't able to. So man, that's such a great skill that your pastor is going to really appreciate, the leader of your team is going to appreciate, is to be the kind of person that walks in and goes, okay, what needs to be done and how can I do it?
Right. Yeah. And I think that besides the amount of value that adds to your leader, the security that they feel knowing that they've got people on their teams that think that way, that process that way. Again, it goes back to, it adds value to the overall system. Yes, we may have janitorial teams and we may have people who have responsibilities in certain areas, but one of the things I talk to my teams about all the time, and I emphasize, I oversee about 10 different teams. And not all campuses have those teams, but Humble has all of those teams. So our largest campus, the Humble campus, has all of them. And it becomes very easy to think, well, that's a greeter responsibility, that's an usher responsibility, that's a parking lot responsibility. And it's like, no, just hold on a second, just stop all that. Because if you can't help each other out, if you can't see maybe a blind spot that somebody has or an opportunity to invest in what they're doing, then we're missing something here. We failed in some regard. We need to go back and we need to kind of start this whole thing over. Because again, it goes back to creating those bridges and creating those environments where at the end of the day, someone comes in and they hear the gospel of Jesus Christ, or they're encouraged about a discipline, or for whatever reason, today is the day that tithing made sense, but because they were able to sit in an environment all along the way that sometimes ushers, if the baby cries in the sanctuary, what's everybody do? We start looking for the ushers, and someone's whole experience is ruined today because of a baby crying in the service. Well, that's possible, but maybe someone's experience was ruined way back in the parking lot because there was nowhere to park because all the volunteers took all the front parking. And we don't even look at our parking lot and say, I can serve my church. I can serve the people coming to my church by parking in the most obscure part. Yeah, I'm going to have to walk a little bit further, but I'm going to walk farther so they don't have to. And I think that that's a great point, Pastor Landon, that you make. Jesus did what needed to be done. And I go back to, we are qualified and are called, and God does give us qualifications and he does call us to specific things. But right now, as a church leader, as a team leader, it's whatever needs to be done right now. We say it a lot around Grace a lot. What is your ministry? It's whatever needs to be done right now. That is what your ministry is. It's not, well, let me go pray about it and let me consult and let me call my mentors and stuff like that. You don't need to contact your mentors about serving at your local church. You don't need to contact your mentors about serving at a higher level. You just do it. I think of one of our pastors here at Grace, Pastor Blake, who he's been here for almost 20 years now, but he started because he simply wanted to serve with the church. And so he went to Pastor Brett and asked if he could clean. And Pastor Brett told him, I don't really have any money to pay you. That's okay. I just want to clean. And now he's one of our executive pastors who's been here probably longer than anybody else on our staff. And it's not because he had all of this incredible talent. He saw a need and he said, I can do that. So I can pass a broom, I can wipe a counter, I can take out some trash, I can do that. So I'm going to serve by doing that. And then then Grace, we look at Grace Church and we see what it is, and because of people who are willing to do stuff like that.
Great. Well, I've got a couple questions that I know some students do too. Do you have more content you want to get through, or?
No, I'm good. Let's go. Let's rock with the questions.
All right. So students, you can go ahead and start putting in some questions, but let me get started. Uh, so my first question is, how do we communicate that mentality to our team? So we're saying, hey, we get it. We're supposed to serve. What's the best way to make that contagious so that the people on our teams adopt the same servant leadership mentality?
Yeah, I think we always lead with the why. So it's so much easier to communicate or to get people on board with what you're trying to accomplish when they know why you're trying to accomplish it. Oftentimes within organizations or people by nature, we want to tell you how to do it and what we want you to do, but we don't really tell you why we want you to do it. And I just think, we got good people in our churches. And if we could tie what they're doing to a salvation moment for an individual,
Wow.
I just don't think, I don't think you'd have a large group of people going, no, I don't really want to have anything to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can figure out how to tie our parking lot teams, our greeter teams, our usher teams, our kids ministry teams, our guest services teams, whatever teams that we have at our churches, to the opportunity for somebody to come today and hear the gospel message of Jesus and their life forever to be changed. I've never had someone go, I don't think I want to do that though, but thank you for offering and have a nice day. You know what I'm saying? It often is because we tell them where we want them to be, how we want them to be there, what we want them to look like, the classes that they have to go through, get there. We kind of guilt them in a way of saying, you're not a good Christian if you're not serving. And people don't respond to that. Most people don't respond to that. But I think if you can lead with the why and you can tie what they're doing, like, celebrating your teams, taking your teams and saying, hey folks, because of what you did this past weekend, 3 people got saved, 4 people got saved, 10 people got baptized, this many people came to church because of what you did. Not because of the message that was preached, which was great, not because of the songs that were sang, which were awesome, but because of the efforts that you made. People really respond to that, and that helps them see themselves in the process and as a solution to the problem versus just someone standing at a door or changing a diaper.
Right. Dr. Brassfield has this teaching where he takes a chain, and if you want the chain to line up and get in order, your instinct might be to push it, like try to push it straight. But with a chain, if you push a chain, it begins to go every different direction. But if you pull the chain, then it lines up. And so many of us, we try to push our teams. we push people. We push people to volunteer. No, can you please serve in kids ministry? Can you please? Look, we don't have anybody. Could you just do it one? I can't believe you're not doing it. You put your kids here every week, and you won't. And we try to push them, and that pushes them away. But the pull is like, hey, did you know that the overwhelming majority of people that make a decision for Jesus do so before they're 12 years old? And you probably will be more influential on a salvation this week if you serve than the speaking pastor will, because most people listening to the pastor have already made up their mind about what they think about Jesus. But you have a chance, and so that's the you want to go serve in kids ministry now, right? There's this opportunity of the chain analogy. And so sometimes I talk a lot about with our team of if it's, hey, fill out a connect card. This is, your area too. It's don't push people to fill it out. Tell them why. Mm-hmm. We just want to connect with you. We want to get to know you better. There are ways that you make it we're pulling, not pushing. Hey, can you please, I need you to fill this out right now. Have you filled it out yet?
Yes.
Can't read that email address. Can you write a little more clearly for us?
Yes.
But just that constant push, are we pushing people or pulling people? The problem with pushing people is that you can get one link sorted out and then you've pushed something else out of whack.
Yeah.
So it's the pull. One other question that I have for you, and then students are starting to put some in, and this is something that's just been on my mind as we're preparing for Mother's Day. Many of us are. Mm-hmm. You oversee, a big team. In what way do you think you being a female has informed your leadership, and what are some of the challenges? We have a lot of female leaders, young women that are stepping into leadership, and there are some unique challenges and perspectives that come with leading at this capacity as a female. Do you mind speaking into that for us?
Sure. I think the answer, you just said it, is yes. There are unique challenges. And one of the things that helped me the most, again, because I go back to, what I said earlier, I'm a very black and white person. I'm a right is right and wrong is wrong. So for many years, I just kind of stayed a little bitter about it. It was like kind of there, and I was just mad about it. And there was nothing profitable with that. I didn't get any further in my calling. I didn't get any further with anything else by being bitter about it. And one of our senior leaders just kind of spoke to me one day, and based off of a sermon that I had preached, and was just kind of critiquing me and stuff, and just made the comment that I do have challenges that exist that he will never have, never have had, and will never have. And don't curse the rain, just carry an umbrella.
Right.
And for me, that was so helpful. That was so helpful. And again, I have a lot of this is one of my senior leaders. He has a very high influence in my life. I'm not telling you to go tell that to people that you don't have any influence with. My point is, there are just some things we cannot do anything about. And I think that being consistent and staying strong through that is super, super helpful. When I took over the team that I lead now, I inherited all of my leaders, all of them. There was a person ahead of me, a middle-aged male, and I came in as I was in my 20s, I was in my late 20s, female, leading a bunch of middle-aged men. And it was hard. It was very hard. And I just put my nose to the plow. I knew what God had called me to do. And I just led the same way I would lead if I was leading middle-aged females. I didn't make excuses. I wasn't meaner. I wasn't nicer. I just was who God called me to be. And so I think it goes back to just, what we were talking about in the scripture. When you're confident in the calling that God has for your life, when you're confident in where he's called you and where he's placed you, you're just going to be who you're going to be. You're going to lead the way that you're going to lead. And then you put people around you that you can trust, that can speak into your world and say things like, don't curse the rain, just carry an umbrella, and you can kind of get that chip off of your shoulder that says, well, it's not fair. Well, yeah, it's not fair. It's not fair, and it's not going to be fair. And tomorrow when you wake up, it's still not going to be fair. So don't curse the rain, just carry an umbrella, and figure out how to make yourself be okay with where you are. Because honestly, what I have found in my time, and even just like with feminist movements as a whole, is more people seem to have a problem with it than I do. And if you're not careful, because people will tell me, oh, is it just so hard being a woman in ministry? I mean, sometimes it's harder at sometimes, but if you're not careful, you'll allow people to put that on you, and where you didn't have a problem before, now all of a sudden you have a problem. And then I think it's being vulnerable with leadership. That's helped me out a lot. I have my direct upline is Pastor Mike Acosta, which many of you know him through Destiny, and we'll continue to get to know him, but he's my direct upline here, and he has been since I've been here. And it's the faith and the confidence that I have in him to say, hey, this is how I'm feeling about this. And he is able to be a champion for me. He's able to be a voice for me. He's able to say, hey, folks, we're leaning in this regard, or, we're going in this direction. He's someone who's been able to go ahead of me and say, let me be clear, this is the girl. And there is not a doubt in our leadership's mind that this is the person that God has placed in this season for you. And would a 28-year-old male had needed that? I don't know. I don't even try to think about that. I just appreciate the fact that my leadership is willing to do that for me. So it's the vulnerability with your leadership to say, hey, I feel like I'm fighting a female battle right now, that this really has nothing to do with what I'm saying, what I'm trying to do. It really has to do with the fact that I'm a girl, and allowing them to help you with that. But with that, you kind of have to put aside your feelings of should they have to, and just go, just let it be.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
that's great. Yeah, I just wanted to get a chance to speak into that, because I know that that those are things that we don't always address as directly as we should, because there are a lot of young ladies and just ladies, women in general, that are in ministry, that are in leadership, and they're fighting these battles that I'm not quite able to understand and speak to. So I'm grateful for you speaking into that. Let me throw another question at you. So the magic is the word that's used here, the magic that you described tonight, this kind of formula of servant leadership. How do you make sure that it is consistent across all of your leadership roles? Because you do manage several teams, as well as the responsibility at all campuses, which that might be a longer discussion about your ability to directly oversee the campuses is somewhat limited. So we have to work together to make sure that's happening. But still, what's the key for the consistency across all teams and all campuses?
Well, I mean, the truth is it's a full-time job. Okay. So the key is keeping up with it. It's keeping it in check. It's making sure it's regular communication with the leader, with the people that I oversee. It's talking to them, it's opening the doors, it's having the conversations of saying, hey, this is what I see, and this is not the direction that we're going to go. So let's have this conversation. But there's a lot of work that goes in on the front end of that. You cannot just go into a group of people and just say, hey, I'm the boss today, and this is how we're going to do it. You have to build a relationship with them, and that comes with consistency. So I serve alongside my people. I don't ask them to do things that I'm not willing to do. I have served in the parking lot. I have served as a greeter. I have served as an usher. I have driven shuttles. I have not been an EMS person because I have no EMS qualifications. Okay. But I serve alongside of my people. I show up early and I leave late. I am the example of what I want them to be. And I think that is a key thing. So I portray what I'm asking them to portray. And then I call out what I see. I think a lot of times, especially in church leadership, we are just so happy that people are serving that we don't feel comfortable. We don't feel like it's our place to kind of hold them accountable to the standards that ultimately reflect our church or that we're asking them to do. So any leader that I have, it's very clear my expectations of them. And I lay it out for them on paper, and we have conversations, and I say, at any point that you cannot do this, you just need to let me know, because this does not need to be a burden to you. This needs to be a ministry for you, but this is the job at this level, at what we are doing, at the responsibility of your team. This is what it has to be. And we have just clear, open communication. And then I live with them in their lives. I know when their birthdays are. I know when their anniversaries are. I know when their kids' birthdays are. I know when their kids' anniversaries are. I know what they do for a living. I know what their spouses do for a living. And I do life with them so that when you have to have those conversations, this is a relationship. It's not necessarily a friendship. I'm not friends with all of them. We don't socialize on the regular. We don't chat outside of like normal responsibilities of just like what we do, but we're building a relationship. But I think the magic, I think the word was magic, is serving alongside of your people and allowing them to see you do what you're asking them to do. And at the level that the Humble campus is and the time that I've spent here recently, one of the things that I have personally had to fight is people saying, you shouldn't do that, you're too busy, you shouldn't have to do that, you have too much responsibility. And that can get to your head. You can start believing you shouldn't have to do that. And the Lord quickened me the other day, and I told somebody, I said, I will never be too busy to serve. Never. I will not do something else, but I will serve. And so I think you as a leader also have to be willing to serve. Again, it goes back to that. It's the belief system that serving matters. And it doesn't just matter for the people under you, it matters for you too. And when you are a servant, and a servant is who you are, and serving is not just what you do, then I think you're going to be fine. Like you're just going to exude it all of the time. And people are going to see that in you, and you become very easy to follow when they see that you are willing to do what you're asking them to do.
Great. That's great. So similarly, overseeing people, serving them without becoming a pushover. So how do you serve your team, but still maintain a sense of like, hey, this is what we're going to do, and without them starting to define it?
Yeah, I think one of the first things I established when I got into my position is I said it right off the bat, which again, I'm a very direct person. And I said, there will be times where I come to you and I'm going to tell you how something is going to be done. And for multiple reasons. One, I don't have the time to discuss it. Two, maybe it's being told, I'm being told, I have bosses too. So maybe they're telling me how it's going to be done. So I'm coming and telling you. But when I can come to you and we can work it out together, that is what we will do. And then I do that and I honor it. I don't just say it and then I don't do it. And so I think how you don't become a pushover, I've never been a pushover, but I've never had to be super, super stern either. I can honestly say with the people that I lead, the leaders that I lead, I have never had major confrontations. I mean, I've had a couple here and there, but again, because I put in the work to create the relationship with them, when I had to go in with the hard conversation, it, for me, wasn't very hard because we have had the other conversations and we've had the relationship. I mean, I have had to remove people from positions and they have not been happy about it. And they don't like me anymore. And they've made that very clear. And that's just part of the responsibility of leadership. Oftentimes we call it the burden of leadership.
Yeah.
There is a burden that comes with leadership, and it's not, you don't always get to be everybody's friends and you don't get invited to everybody's parties. I hear all the time of all of these get-togethers people have, and I'm like, man, where did my invitation go? You know what I'm saying? But that's just part of being in leadership. And as a leader,
I wouldn't have went anyways, but I wish it was.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have been invited. Exactly. But I think that's just part of being a leader. When you accept the calling that God has on your life, you understand that it comes with that sometimes. And I think it's setting clear boundaries on the front end. I think a lot of what we get into pushover situations when we feel guilty because we didn't ultimately communicate it correctly on the front end. So then someone comes back with us and we feel guilty. And so we give in. But when we're very assured, when it was very well communicated, like what we were going to do and what we were not going to do and how we were going to do this, and then you just don't do it, I don't really feel any guilt with that. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think that that's because I'm like a cold or harsh person. I think it's just because everything was very clear on the front end. But when I don't establish those boundaries and I don't clearly communicate, that's when I'm like, okay, I can see how you would feel that way. And that is where I am inclined to back off or concede or something like that.
Yeah. And I think whenever you have a strong sense of I'm doing what my pastors want me to do, like this is their vision, it helps depersonalize it a little bit. Like I'm not being harsh. I just know that this is what I've been asked to do. And if you're the senior leader, then you're hearing from what God wants you to do. And so like someone's leading your team. So, and your pastor's asked you to do it. And if you're not doing it and you're letting the people on the team lead it, then you're shirking your responsibility. So just kind of like, this is part of it.
Right.
So how do we celebrate our teams? And the question is, especially when they're small. So maybe a smaller church, smaller environment.
Sure.
What are some good ways to celebrate our teams?
I think bringing them into the wins of the church is, like I said earlier, when you lead with the why and you can bring them into how we were successful. So we can talk about like tangible things, obviously, but I think making them a part of the win. At the end of the day, people, I don't get the feeling, and I've never, even at a church our size with as many commuting type people as we have, people aren't really coming to serve for a financial contribution or a really like a bring me up on the stage and tell everybody how wonderful I am. Now those people exist, but by and large, that's not the majority. They just want to know that like what they're doing matters. And so when you can bring them into the win, when it's everybody's win, when the Sunday sermon is everybody's win, when the outreach is everybody's win, when you can take opportunities to show those that are serving how they made an impact or a change in someone's world, I think that that's a way to celebrate them. Right. And then I think you get creative. Just post Easter, we did something very simple. We bought full-size chocolate bars and we put a tag on them that says, "Thanks a Chocolate." And that was to thank our volunteers for the immense efforts they put into our Easter weekend. And you would have thought for some of these people that we gave them $100 bill. I mean, I came to the realization that adults don't eat full-size chocolate bars anymore. It's like we just don't do it. We're all health conscious, weight conscious, and mini candy is so popular. So when's the last time you've had a full-size candy bar? It's been a while.
Yeah.
So as we're passing out these full-size candy bars, we are making their day. Like, we are revolution. And all it was a full-size candy bar that said thanks to chocolate on it. So I think, from a non-tangible perspective, putting them in the win, showing them, communicating with them. So if it's baptism Sunday and you baptize 5 people, we baptize 5 people. This church together, the greeter team helped facilitate. The usher team helped make it to where 5 people could hear the message and want to go get, and when you can do that with them, you're ultimately celebrating them, in my opinion.
That's great. Some common reasons why people don't serve and how we can address this to get them to take that step.
Yeah. So, I think discipleship is a big part of that. I think people believing that they should, I think sometimes churches, we don't do a great job of that. We don't communicate kind of how fulfilled their life can be. And going back to the not leading with the wire, the push and the pull analogy, we're trying to push them into doing something, and people just don't want to do something. They don't sign up for things they feel guilty about, by and large. So I think that plays a big role in it. I think just continuing to keep it out there, like, don't give up. Don't give up. Don't keep communicating the win of that, the win of serving on a team. And then encouraging your people to recruit people. We have found that the best way to get people to serve is to find someone who's happily serving and get them to invite someone to serve with them, because it's not, of course, the guy on the stage is going to tell you how wonderful it is to serve. He's getting basically paid to do that. But when you can influence those who are serving to recruit somebody to serve, that's just so huge. And so I think it's figuring out ways to maximize getting your people to bring you. Do you like serving? Do you like being a greeter? Yeah. Well, then go find someone to do it with you. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'll find someone, but I think that plays a role.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a discipleship thing. I also think honoring your commitment. So if you're telling people, hey, we want you to serve and you'll serve once a month, but then because your team's small, you're making them serve every week. And that becomes kind of the culture of the church. It's like culture of burnout and overworking people. That gets out. Like, people kind of start to like, man, I don't want to serve because my friend serves and he's been in kids ministry every week this month. And so I think it's a big part of trying to find ways to make sure that we're creating a healthy culture of yes, you can serve, but we're not going to abuse you or overdo this.
Yeah.
As well. There's so many great questions. But here's a great one. A role description, if someone is serving part-time or full-time, like, how do we determine how much weight someone can handle based on whether or not they're staff, or if they're part-time staff, if they're full-time staff? That's the first part of the question. And there's a great second part, but let's just go there. How do we distinguish those roles?
Yeah, I think, I'm trying to think. It's taking the time to really evaluate the responsibility. And I think you put it all out on paper. And what I have found is sometimes when I do that, I realize this is too much for a lay volunteer. This is too much for a person who also works a 40-hour, 60-hour, just depending on week job, to then ask them to do this. So you just create more jobs. I think that you have a team leader, and then you may have a co-team leader, and then you may have a scheduler. But you have to start somewhere. And I think a lot of times we just don't even start. And so we never write it down. We never put it on paper, and we never even try to establish a responsibility because we've just already assumed it's going to be too much. So we just kind of let it flow and flex, and nobody wins in that environment. The person who's leading doesn't win, and you don't win. So I think you start by looking at the position and writing out what you think as the leader you would want that person to do, and then look at it. You're smart. You'll be able to tell. Get counsel from other people, and then if you need to create a co-position for that or another position, then just do it.
Right.
That's what I would say.
Yeah. Or sometimes it's like, okay, well, what can paid staff administratively support to make that load easier?
Yeah.
So like that means, so sometimes at our campus, we have a small team, but that might mean we might do some of the scheduling with paid staff
Hmm.
just to take that responsibility off of a leader. So like what could we do on our part? If you're dealing in a smaller church situation where there's some part-time people, some full-time people, sometimes it is saying, okay, well, what can we, what is feasible for us to pull off their plate, so
Absolutely.
that they can do what they need to do is they need to be an awesome greeter. And they need to be like there Sunday morning, all smiles and all. So if that means that we need to do planning center for them, or we need to schedule their trainings for them and make sure that they have materials and resources to be able, like, we'll do that part.
Yep.
But to let them shine.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, then how many people are you overseeing, and what is your system for remembering birthdays and anniversaries?
So at the Humble campus, I oversee about 450 people. At this point, pre-COVID, it was probably closer to 600. All campuses wide, so take that number 600 maybe. So I don't remember everybody's birthday. I don't even always remember everybody's name. I make the investment into my leaders. And so the people that I am leading, the people that report directly to me, I remember this. I put it on my calendar, so I just ask them for it. So when a new leader comes on my team, I kind of give them like a get to know me sheet. So I want to know their birthday. I want to know when their spouse's birthday are. I want to know when their anniversary is. I want to know if they have kids, when their kids is. I want to know what they like. I want to know what sports teams that they like and stuff like that. I just ask them. And then I put it on my calendar and I set reminders to remind myself that it's so-and-so's birthday in a week. So I get my card out and I get my card written and, you know what I'm saying, stuff like that. I use technology because there is absolutely no way I could remember it without that.
Right. That's great. Well, Heather, this has been so good tonight. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
your wisdom and your sharing with us. And I know you've helped a lot of people and answered a lot of really practical questions. Now the follow-up is that could you share the get to know you sheet? Is it a formal like file that you have?
I think it is. Yeah, I will look for it. I haven't added someone to my team in a while. I've had the same leaders for a while, but I will look for it. And if I can find it, I will pass it along.
That's great. That's great. We're giving people what they need.
Exactly.
Awesome. Hey, this has been so good. Thank you for joining us, and students, thanks for logging on and being so involved in the chat. And if you have any questions or want to follow up, you can always email us. But Heather, have a great evening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Bye, everybody.
Bye.